Hey everyone, welcome to Bald Guy Money. In this video, we're talking about the revaluation of gold and silver, the likelihood of it happening, how it will affect you, as well as things to look for in a what I like to call doo-doo hits the fan situation. And this is a very important topic to cover because as it stands today, there are about 180 currencies in the world for the 195 countries that are officially recognized by the United Nations. And according to the IMF, hyperinflation has occurred in 56 of those 195 countries since 1950. Meaning, of the 180 currencies currently being used, 31% of them have experienced periods of hyperinflation. And that number is likely higher, as there are modern examples that are candidates for this club, which I was unable to find in the IMF's data, and those are Lebanon, Turkey, and Nigeria. Now, we usually like to associate hyperinflation with backward or undeveloped countries. But if history has proven anything, it's that with the wrong leaders, this can happen to you. And as we look at this list of supposedly developing countries where it has happened, I want to encourage each and every one of you to watch this video to the very end, because I am going to show you the exact signs to look for that will warn you ahead of time that you could be entering a period of hyperinflation or economic collapse. Now, just before I start, I want to kindly ask you to leave a like for this video, and that will help YouTube recommend this video to people as opposed to videos like this. It's really a battle for the minds of our youth, and your like will help this video reach them as opposed to, again, whatever this stuff here is. Okay, so let's start with the revaluation topic and why so many people are talking about it right now. In 1934, President Franklin Roosevelt of the United States, seen here, signed the Gold Reserve Act into law. Now, a lot of people like to associate this with gold only, but the truth is that this law had huge implications for silver as well as gold. And those implications were, number one, and that is that it prohibited the ownership of gold. And why I mention this, although it's not exactly related to the topic of this video, is that I know there are a lot of viewers out there who are concerned about this potentially happening again. And what I want to say is that if we learned anything from the Gold Reserve Act of 1934, it's that the government cannot successfully enforce a prohibition on the ownership of gold any better than they were able to successfully enforce a prohibition on the consumption of alcohol. Now, moving on to a more important topic, and that's number two, is that this act revalued gold from $20.67 per ounce up to $35 per ounce. And as a consequence of that, it resulted in the price of silver increasing from around 29 cents per ounce up to the 50-cent level, until later that year, in 1934, the Silver Purchase Act was passed, which revalued silver up to 64.5 cents per ounce. Now, I could go on for a whole video about the history of this alone, and if that's something you want to see, let me know in the comments right now. But to make a long story short, it wasn't the value of gold and silver that went up as a result of this revaluation. It was actually the value of the US dollar that went down. And as you can see here, between 1933 and 1950, the purchasing power of the US dollar note declined by about 85%, despite the fact that the $35 to 1 ounce gold peg was preserved during this period. And in a world where we talk a lot about the manipulation and suppression of the price of metals, here is proof of the ultimate manipulation that happened under the so-called gold standard. Because it wasn't until Nixon removed the USA from the gold standard in 1971 that the price of gold on the open market could enter an exploratory phase and catch up with all of the inflation that had occurred since 1934. And nothing tells the story better than this gold price chart. So before I get to the doo-doo hits the fan topic, I just want to highlight these points that are extremely important for those of you who think the revaluation of gold and silver is a good thing. And the first point is that top-down valuation of metals resulted in long-term price suppression, but created an opportunity in the early days for gold and silver owners, as they could have converted their metals for dollars at the start and exchanged it for hard assets that were free to appreciate in value, namely real estate. Number two, supply and demand on a free market is the best determinant of the price of gold and silver, of course, minus any manipulation that goes on by banks. But the data clearly shows it is better now than it was under the gold standard because the US government debased the dollar note at a forced peg to metals. In addition to that, I also added some things that I kind of consider future learnings that we can take. And the first one is that gold and silver cannot be revalued in US dollars because they are no longer backed by the US dollar. And as I stated before, even if the US dollar decided to adopt once again a gold and silver standard, the fact of the matter is, whatever peg it is they decide to peg it to, it is actually a negative thing for gold and silver stackers. And the second point is, any BRICS valuation or peg to their currency will impact the dollar value of gold and silver positively as a result of increased demand for metals driven by continued and increased stacking by central banks, who may try to follow suit and maintain the strength of their currency using metals. But this price increase will not be due to any arbitrary decision taken by the BRICS. And what I want to warn everybody out there watching this video of is that they too will likely debase their currency versus their metal reserves, just like the USA did. Now, for anyone who wants to debate these points with me in the comments section, my heart and mind are both open, so please let me know what you think in the comments section. I only ask you to please keep the comments clean and respectful. And now on to the second topic, which is what happens when things collapse. So what actually does a doo-doo hits the fan situation look like? And as I demonstrated earlier, it can happen anywhere. So don't think that you're immune to it just because you live in a developed or industrialized society. No fiat currency is special in this regard. And there are signs that show us when this is happening. And I covered these signs in a video that I did in April 2022. And as a reminder to you, here they are. And the first point, which I added specifically for the purpose of this video, is that within an economy, within a country, you start to see high rates of inflation. This is the first red flag. And the truth is, we're beginning to see this in economies and countries all across the world. So there are really a lot of red flags to see right now. And once that starts happening, people begin to lose trust in the currency they are using. As a result, alternatives start to pop up. And by alternatives, I mean alternative options to the currency that you're using within your given country. And the first alternatives that usually start to pop up are another country's currency, as we saw in Yugoslavia in the 1990s when the economy became dominated by the German mark. But it doesn't have to be another country's currency. It can even be things like gold and silver, which have been used as of late in Venezuela on a smaller scale, or Bitcoin in Nigeria, which has also been used on a small scale. And why I've highlighted this second point in red is because once those alternatives start to pop up, that's a very bad sign. In fact, it's a sign you need to get out of the currency you're in as much as your day-to-day reality allows you to, because it's only a matter of time before things start to get officially priced in the alternative currency. And then, moving to step 4, the market no longer wants to accept the official currency, and step 5, it becomes worthless. And sadly, this is something that we've seen countless times throughout history. And although what I think the BRICS countries is trying to do is very interesting, I do want to warn you all about this, that no matter what currency has risen to be the preferred one based on its global reserve status, that trust is always broken, and it is eventually replaced. And just like the dollar could now be challenged by an alternative, remember that the reason for this alternative has nothing to do with what we want as gold and silver stackers, which is sound money. It has more to do with the power that controlling a reserve currency gives the currency issuer. And the BRICS want to exert that power over other countries, just like the United States has for the past 50, 60, 70, 80 years. And that's why, if you really want to protect yourself against a situation like the one I've just described, it's extremely important that you hold gold and silver for those moments when things start to get out of control. Because no matter what alternatives arise from the ashes of the economy, you will be able to start over with gold and silver because they are hard assets that protect the value of your money today. And if things really descend into chaos, your gold and silver will give you the resources needed to weather the storm and scoop up other hard assets at discounted prices, which will undoubtedly improve your lifestyle or your family's once the dust settles. Now to this video's viewer question, and it comes from a viewer who calls himself or herself DXGI. And DXGI asked in the comments section of my last video, why would you use your whole nest egg of metal to buy a property? You could use your example and put 20% down on 5 houses or buy a multifamily. Now, for those of you who haven't seen that video, I spoke about when the best time to convert metals into real estate is based on a tool that I created and put available for people who are members on my Patreon. And I think that's a great question from DXGI. And what I want to say is that if you are comfortable leveraging yourself like that, it's not a problem at all. I personally just prefer to use cash and avoid debt because I am not trying to take a risky path to being very, very rich. I prefer the guaranteed long-term path to become well off. So thanks again, DXGI, for the question. I guess at the end of the day, it simply boils down to how much leverage you are comfortable taking on. Clearly, I have a lower tolerance for taking on leverage than you do, but that does not mean that taking on leverage is the wrong decision or the wrong thing for you, just because I personally don't like to do it. That's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If so, please subscribe to the channel for more content and to help my channel grow. And if you want more Bald Guy videos, as well as all the tools I use, and as well as my monthly newsletter, don't forget to sign up for my Patreon, and I will leave a link for the Patreon along with all the sources to the data I presented in this video in the description, as well as an additional link to the Patreon in the pinned comment below. And until the next time we see each other, thank you so much for watching. See you later. Goodbye.